All right, guys. Some of you may have seen some of this before. It's new to me, but it's interesting nonetheless. So, Neil deGrasse Tyson went on Ben Shapiro's show, and well, to make matters short, Neil deGrasse Tyson absolutely schooled Ben Shapiro and his retarded views. But so I had several different possibilities. Like I could uh watch someone else reacting to different parts of this interview or this discussion and then react on top of that, which I think is like a little much. And then there's various versions that kind of clip different parts or whatever. But I decided I'm just going to take Ben Shapiro's own version. It's just a clip of them discussing transgenderism. So, one, if there's any editing involved, it's going to be in Ben Shapiro's favor, obviously, because he's the one in control of that. Um, so, in a way, that kind of puts Neil deGrasse Tyson at a disadvantage. But I'm so confident that Neil deGrasse Tyson, like, absolutely annihilates Ben Shapiro here that it doesn't even matter. Anyhow, let's go ahead and get this going.
It seems like the left is militating against the advent of science. One of those areas is the area of transgenderism. The argument that is typically made by gender theorists is that gender is entirely separate from sex. You've seen the argument made that it makes no difference on average if men are stronger than women.
So he's separating two different things here. So the first is the claim, the factual claim, by the way, that gender is entirely different than sex, entirely separate. That's a fact. That's not an opinion. And if you're going to talk about science, you need to disclose that fact. It is a fact. It's not an opinion. Like, you have to acknowledge that before the discussion can even move further. And personally, I think Neil deGrasse Tyson should have brought that up. He's a little extra polite, in my opinion. Maybe because it's on Ben Shapiro's show, I don't know, but like, yeah, that's very important. Like, it kind of destroys almost everything that Ben Shapiro's saying. Now, the second part, there's valid points to discuss, and I like how Neil deGrasse Tyson actually engages with it. Honestly, he admits that there's an issue there, that just like I do, that in sports there is an issue with an unfair advantage when it comes to transgenderism, and there is. I mean, it's just true. You can sift through propaganda and shit, but at the end of the day, if you actually look at the science, it's true. It's a problem. It's something we need to address. But you can't conflate those two things. So, whether or not there's a difference, or that, yeah, there's a fundamental difference between sex and gender, factually true, and whether or not there's a undue advantage to, like, say, men who identify as women who are participating in female sports, they're two very, very different things. And you can't conflate them unless you're just being a liar. Okay?
Women are, and that if we were to allow transgender women to compete with non-transgender women, then this would somehow not disadvantage biological women. And this seems to me absolutely ascientific, that if we're actually going to have a discussion about gender and sex, that should be based in data, which suggests that mammals are in fact binary in terms of their sex, unless you have intersex birth defects typically, or genetic defects.
I'm happy to opine on this. This only matters because today we segregate nearly all sports by gender. Otherwise, why do you even give a shit? what someone identifies with? That we live in a free country, and with consenting adults and people free expression of who and what they are.
Yeah, on adult level, I agree with you. I think it does matter what you teach
That's what
children.
I'm saying. And so there's the matrix of what you are biologically, how you express yourself, who you choose as a sexual partner. If we actually live in a free country, as we tell ourselves, people's freedom to behave in any of those ways should not concern you at all. Nor are they requiring that you behave that way. Okay?
Well,
this is for their own freedoms, because we live in a free country. Now, what is unresolved here is, what do you do with sports? It's unresolved. And I've followed that closely, and I don't see any meaningful solutions to come down off of that. We know that hormones manifest differently in different people, and just the whole thing with steroids. Steroids are hormones, right? And we rallied against steroids in professional sports because it gives you an undue advantage. So I've tried to think of what the future of sports would be in the world of a gender spectrum. And it may be, you don't specify whether it's a male or female sport. You just take measurements of what your hormonal balances are. And so you compete based on your hormones. This is thought I had. I don't know. I don't know where it's going to land.
The WNBA won't be in business for very long if that's the case.
It would just be you'd have to find some way to compete people against each other if you still care that sports is an interesting activity.
I guess the area where it does come up in a non-sports.
Like how Ben Shapiro had to throw in that bigoted, snarky ass WNBA comment, absolutely irrelevant to the conversation. And by the way, yeah, the WNBA wouldn't be in business for very long because it wouldn't be the WNBA any longer. It would be entirely based, as Neil deGrasse Tyson said, on hormone levels. So it wouldn't be about male versus female anymore. He kind of covered that. And notice how Ben Shapiro is so stupid he can't even fathom what he's saying. And by the way, this is just Neil deGrasse Tyson he even admits he's just kind of shooting at the hip here of a possible solution. He admits that he doesn't really know what the answer is. But instead of engaging in meaningful conversation, Ben Shapiro just goes to this snarky ass bigoted comment. Retarded.
Area.
Yeah, tell me. I don't know.
So it would be, you talk in your book about the education of children and teaching children about science. And right now, children are being taught about the quote unquote gender spectrum, which is not scientifically based. That is a theory based idea.
No, wait, hold on. People express themselves on a spectrum. So you learn that.
That's a social point, not a scientific point.
It's
meaning we express ourselves
hold on.
based in different languages. Is that something you teach in science class, or is that something that you teach when you're teaching language?
So whether the fact that people want to express themselves on a spectrum, on a gender spectrum, whether that fact is something you want to put in a sociology class or in a science class, maybe that remains to be determined. But it is a real fact about real society.
Well, of course, nobody's denying that people identify how they want to identify.
So
the question is, what is the relationship of that to biology? Meaning that the argument is made that trans women are women, for example, and what that.
No one makes it about biology is another issue he's making here. So the right love to do this thing where they claim that people on the left believe that this is a common trope here, that men can transform into women. Generally, they don't say it the other way around. It's like they're uber focused on this one particular transition, I guess, which is hilarious in itself. But this notion that everyone on the left believes that biologically a man can turn into a woman biologically is just stupid. It's a straw man because no one fucking believes that. People on the left believe that there are people who are biologically male who feel as if they're in the wrong body, so to speak. And this is scientific. Yes, it is. This, and that's kind of what Neil deGrasse Tyson is trying to like. He's like walking the dog with Ben Shapiro because Ben Shapiro is so stupid and closed-minded. Like he's, in my opinion, too polite, but still, he's covering that this is a matter of science because it is. Yeah. Anyway, let's continue.
That seems to mean is that trans women are identical to women. Now, if people want to say trans women are not biological women, obviously that is the case. But people don't seem to want to say that, although that is obviously scientifically true. Trans women are not biological women. Biological women are biological women.
But where are you going with this?
He's right, but it seems like for one, it's not that like people who make these claims actually believe that they're biologically women. They just don't want to be assholes. These, like, even if you want to go so far as to say that transgenderism is like a mental illness or something, fine. Just for the sake of argument, like, let's concede that. Fine. You're not helping anyone by being a dick. It's none of your fucking business. Like, you're not engaging in like, this is what, these are facts and these facts matter. Like, that's how he wants to kind of portray it. That's not the truth. The truth is you're a fucking dickhole. And yeah, there's no fucking reason for this shit. But like, I guess Neil deGrasse is kind of going to get into it here.
What are you trying to accomplish by asking yourself, is it science or is it not science? It's people in society.
But this is a perfect example of an area where suddenly it doesn't matter to say things that are just true. Like, why is it bad or wrong?
See, he's trying to make it about, this is just about truth. No, it's not, because again, in definitely in my experience, and I've never seen an example to the contrary, people don't actually believe that men who transition into women are biologically becoming women. So you are lying in order to cover your bigoted bullshit, which is very telling.
I have another way to approach this. I care what is objectively true in the world as a scientist. But let me not say even as a scientist. I just simply care what is objectively true. And science happens to be a pretty potent path to invoke, to find out what is true. And so if people express themselves on a gender spectrum, and that is an actual thing in an actual society, if we have not fully explained that scientifically, that's an interesting frontier to study. If you want to say it's only sociological, then it's the purview of the social sciences. I don't care who studies it. It's an interesting fact about society that's worth learning about. To fight someone and say, it's not biological, it's just it's real and it's there.
Well,
because it's real because it manifests.
But it is real because it manifests. But the question of how to classify manifestation is a scientific question, meaning that, for example, there was a woman over at Brown University. Mm-hmm. She came out with a study that suggested that there was a phenomenon called rapid onset gender dysphoria, in which a member of a particular group would suffer from gender dysphoria, and this person's immediate peer group would suddenly have an onset of gender dysphoria. This paper was so controversial that Brown tried to pull it, and then was forced to reassign it later. You see this sort of
treatment. That's a different question. What you're asking now is, are there some topics that should not be studied scientifically?
Right.
And Is there some taboo? And Sam Harris speaks a lot about this.
Yes.
And I think the concern is if you study some topic that's a hot button topic and you bring scientific methods and tools to it, we don't trust. I'm interpreting here. I think we as a society don't trust that people in charge in a free country won't try to legislate something that will constrict people's freedoms in the face of that information. I think that's the fear.
Well, isn't that...
It's a fear.
I mean, and isn't that...
We don't trust our own ability to govern ourselves in the face of what could be some information relative to other kinds of information.
Isn't that a bit of a problem?
Yes. I mean, yeah. Yeah, it's not. It means it's not a free society. It's not a society of free inquiry, which I think you need ultimately. But yeah.
My general take on all of this stuff, from climate change to gender dysphoria to all of these issues, is bring out the science and then let's hash it out.
Not true, because the science is very one-sided on climate change. Yet you don't acknowledge it. You just say that's fake. You're a conspiracy theorist. You're an idiot, a fucking moron that talks fast. That's about it. Like, so if it were true and you're trying to present the case that like it's all about what is true, then you would simply look at the insane mountains of fucking evidence to show that man-made climate change is indeed a thing and is fueling the problem. If you're not going to acknowledge that, then you kind of don't have a leg to stand on when it comes to this whole discussion. So I'm glad you brought that up, Ben. What a fucking moron.
I think that the problem I'm seeing on a lot of sides is...
What is your motivation?
Why? Why does that matter?
It matters because if you have political power, you could end up creating legislation that subtracts freedoms from people who previously were enjoying the same freedoms as you. The history of that exercise...
I like it. Again, he's a little polite for my taste, but he's essentially getting to the crux of this. He's showing that Ben Shapiro is being fake here. And he's showing his intent, the intent behind why he's so obsessive about this issue, and pretty much all of the right for that matter. It's not because of this desire for truth. That's fucking retarded. It's because he's a bigot. It's because he wants to use like science as like a tool to excuse his bigotry. That's it. He's just a piece of shit. That's all there is to it. And in a very clever way here, that's what Neil deGrasse Tyson is showing.
Then make a better argument.
Doesn't end well.
Yeah, well, but the
make a better argument. He just destroyed your entire fucking argument. Too politely for sure, but like make a better argument. Like your argument is nothing, Ben. You haven't made an argument. Like you were destroyed from the get-go.
The history of which exercise? Bring out all the science and let's hash it out.
I'm saying if you bring out all the science and the politicians hash it out, the history of that exercise is a recipe for disaster if it involves discoveries that put people's freedom as defined in our Constitution at risk.
But now you're arguing for limitations on areas of particular study.
No, I'm arguing on we need a way to shield, we need a way to protect people's freedoms in the face of whatever gets discovered scientifically.
So
I'll give you.
I agree. I think that's what the Constitution is for, is to guard rights from.
But we're always fighting people who want rights are always fighting others who are saying they don't get the rights from the Constitution. This is a daily challenge on the progressive left. It is a daily challenge, right? Here's an example. I forgot how I ended up getting this phone call. It was some magazine that serves the gay community. And they want, I remember why, because they wanted my opinion on, they wanted my opinion about whether being gay was biological or mental.
Right, there's that new study that came out, this vast study.
Or psychological.
Right,
okay?
Right.
And I said, I don't care which it is. Find out what it is, fine. But the answer to that question should have no consequence on legislations or laws. Because, for example, suppose it said it's purely biological, okay? Then you say, oh, that explains it. Suppose it says it's purely psychological. What are you going to do now? You say, well, now you're going to go to the reorientation camps or whatever those are called, where they realign you because they say it's psychological rather than biological. All of a sudden, people start behaving in ways in society that want to constrict the freedom of expression of who and what people are. And that is a danger. So maybe there needs to be a line in the sand. Let science do what it does, but politicians keep us free. Yet there's so many politicians that are doing the opposite of that.
So why aren't you a libertarian?
And that scares me.
I'm a libertarian. Come over here. Just
okay.
The line is right here. Just join me over here.
So Ben Shapiro completely lost. So what he did is he pivoted to, why aren't you a libertarian? Like he's going to something to where he might think he can grab a W instead of conceding defeat, which that would be the honest thing to do. He should just say, yeah, I lost here. Of course, he's not going to do that. I will kind of disagree with Neil deGrasse Tyson. Well, actually, I agree with him in the specific context of what he said. With it doesn't really matter whether it's biological or psychological. So we have a ton of evidence to show that being gay and also trans is biological in nature, and that does matter. So in the context of what he said when it comes to like your protections and everything, I agree with what he's saying because he's kind of touching it in a specific way. But in a different way, it does matter. And the reason why is because almost all of the pushback, the mental gymnastics that people on the right use to excuse their hatred toward gay people or trans people, is that they believe that it's entirely a personal choice. And all of the data goes against that, which means they, Ben Shapiro included, are fighting science. And it shows that when they pull this science thing, that it's all bullshit. It's all like manipulating things and using mental gymnastics in order to try to present it as if it's about science. But when you actually look at the science, it goes against everything they say, as tends to be the case. So they're fucking liars, and they're just trying to fucking excuse their bigotry and act as if it's about the truth when it's not. So especially trans is a little bit more, we're still learning about it, but there is a lot of evidence to show that it's biological in nature. It manifests extremely early, even before any sort of social cues can be like social, what would you call it? Like nurture effects your environment can like change things. It already manifests before that, and that should be a pretty big clue. But when it comes to gays, like we already know, like absolutely for a fact, that it's primarily biological. Yes, there are elements of nurture in there, but it's not true what the right always try to push, that they're trying to turn our kids gay or they're trying to turn our kids trans. It doesn't work that way. Like, assuming that I'm sure a majority of you will be heterosexual, just put yourself in that place and even go further and have like a society where there is an actual agenda to turn you gay. It wouldn't work because you're not biologically hardwired for it. It's no different. People who are gay are biologically hardwired to be gay. They're attracted to the same sex because they were born that way. This is where, this isn't just evidence. This is proof on this specific one. Like absolute, beyond a shadow of a doubt. So where I was going with this is the right constantly do this thing where they desperately want and even need it to be a personal choice, because then they can attack it and say, I'm not against people. It's not about that they're being gay. It's that it's a personal choice and it's against God and all this crap. And they use that as an excuse for their hatred. And sometimes they'll even mask their hatred by being like, I don't hate the person. I just hate the act. And then they try to like conflate it to like, so it's kind of like murder. Like you don't have to murder someone, but you're doing it and it's a personal choice. And see, the science actually shows that's not the case. It's actually biological in nature, which destroys their entire narrative, which is why they so desperately want to cling on to it. Because the moment it becomes biological, then they're bigots and they're trying to hate people for something that they have absolutely no control over. So some will even go a step further in the mental gymnastics and they'll claim, okay, so it's biological. They'll concede that. And they're like, sure, but you don't have to act on it. And they'll like compare it with pedophilia and stuff because that's similar. And they'll be like, yeah, but you even then you lose, because you can directly point to the harm that pedophiles cause to children, or at least if they act on their desires. You can't do so with homosexuals. Like, you just can't. Like, all the arguments you make will be based on lies or just you fucking pulling shit out of your ass. Like saying that, like, gay people, you'll point to things that are absolutely like irrelevant to the discussion. Like you'll pivot to something like gay people and AIDS. Like they're going around spreading AIDS and shit. Like stupid argument. Like absolutely irrelevant. So you'll jump to shit like that, but still concede that it's biological and then point out that the act itself is what's evil. And that's like, it would be the same thing if things were reversed and like just in some magical world fucking I know there would be a lot of issues here, especially when it comes to like procreation, but bear with me for a second. If we lived in a world where it was the odd thing to be heterosexual, then it would be like they were to like pressure you and force you to behave in a way that's absolutely not how you're wired, just for arbitrary reasons. Like, you are not allowed to have sex with the opposite sex. You're not allowed to be involved or to be in love with someone of the opposite sex. And it's important. The reason why it's the same is because it's biological. It's how you're born. It's the way you're wired. And then, like, they persecuted you and attacked you because of that. It's stupid. There's no excuse for it. There's no logical reasoning behind it, which is why you constantly use mental gymnastics to excuse your fucking bigotry. So if we boil it all down and fucking actually look at the facts here, the people who have a problem with homosexuality are pieces of shit. They're garbage human beings. And they just desperately want to find some sort of, like, in their mind, legitimate reason to excuse their hatred. But there isn't one. Not scientifically, not in any way, shape, or form. They're just pieces of shit. I mean, that's all there is to it. Anyhow, thank you for your time.